Okay, calling the Joint Committee on Ways and Means and Higher Education to order. This afternoon, we'll hear from the University of Hawaii, who will be presenting their supplemental budget requests. Good afternoon. President Lasner.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and members. I'll try to be brief, much as I would like to fill up the 2 hours with my opening remarks. First, let me summarize what has been the most pressing issue for us over the past almost 2 years now, and that is COVID. We're an extraordinarily complicated organization, about $1.5 billion in total expenditures in some years, including federal and auxiliaries, with employees spread across the state and facilities everywhere. I have to say I could not be prouder of the work our faculty and staff have done under extremely trying circumstances. From the time we made the first decision that we would need to pivot online, I believe we were the first entity in the state to recognize it and communicate that decision. Our faculty have done an amazing job of teaching our students online. Our students have been incredibly resilient. All of our support services have been available, and in particular, our student residence halls and our health systems have really responded to the needs of our students. We were among the first to adopt a mandatory vaccination policy for our students and employees. We implemented a mobile app, which we continue to use to this day, that has current vaccination status, and we require everyone to do a daily self-check of their own health. We could not have done this without excellent collaboration with our unions. I'm very grateful. We haven't always agreed about everything, but both UPA and HGA have been the partners that we've needed, and I believe we have been the employer that they've needed to keep our students and our employees safe. And most importantly of all, we have continued our mission, and I'll share some highlights when I summarize some of our testimony in that regard. I want to make one key point about this pandemic. I really don't much enjoy the statement that in every crisis there is opportunity, but what I will say is that there are lessons from this crisis that I think we will learn moving forward. One of them has to do with the use of technology. We have moved scores of processes online using a piece of workflow software that we had acquired from within the higher education community. And pretty much the only thing I personally sign right now are gift acknowledgements and retirement certificates. Almost everything else is handled online. We're not 100% there, but we're mostly there. And that's a change that will benefit us. A second area is online learning. And in needing to pivot online, I want to say that the remote learning that we've done, essentially shifting to Zoom, is not the high quality online that we really aspire to for serving adult learners and others who have different needs for asynchronous opportunities and competency-based approaches. But what it has done is everyone within the university now understands the tools that are available and how to use them. And lastly, and I know committee members have asked about this, we have also pushed pretty hard on what it means to engage in what is known now throughout the country as the future of work, which is highly Googleable. And that is looking at remote and hybrid working environments in which not every employee needs to come to the office, or in our case, the campus, in order to perform their duties. And that has two sets of benefits as we learn how to refine our processes. One is that ideally over time, we'll be able to reduce our footprint with fewer people on our campuses. And secondly, we know that we compete for employees in a complicated and difficult workplace. And we're very interested in being an employer of choice. Last year, Forbes recognized us as one of the best employers in Hawaii. It was a surprise to us, but it was a welcome surprise, and we would like to continue to maintain that. Let me shift a little bit now to share how we're thinking about the future. In October 2020, when we were faced with what we believed was going to be one of the worst financial crises in the history of the state and the university, the Board of Regents adopted a budget policy paper framework for the current biennium that laid out a plan for UH to be more active in how we address the financial challenges and seize the opportunities for Hawaii. And there were two parts to that. One was really prioritizing in a much more direct manner what it is the state of Hawaii needs from us. And I won't go into detail, I'll just share the headlines, and if you have questions, I'm glad to ask. One is to engage more of Hawaii's residents in post-secondary education and training. And we know that higher education is the best agent of economic and social mobility. In general, a UH bachelor's degree is worth over $1 million in lifetime earnings, far more than the cost to students and their families. But it also has intergenerational benefits in reducing incarceration, reducing draws on social services, extending lifetimes, improving health outcomes. College graduates are more likely to vote, to volunteer, and so forth. They truly are better citizens for our state. Second is a direct focus on workforce. And I think across our university system, all of us are looking much harder at what are the jobs in Hawaii, what are the jobs that Hawaii needs, and how does the University of Hawaii prepare students for those. Third is to seed new economic sectors and develop new approaches to old ones. That is really looking at the necessary economic diversification of our state. Most of you have been around for 1, 2, 3, or 4 recessions, and we're really determined to do our part to help diversify the economy with a focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. And fourth and last is really looking at our research enterprise as a major economic and intellectual driver. Last year, we brought in almost $500 million in extramural funding. That's funding from other sources, not tuition and not state general funds. That employs thousands of people across the islands. So just the very act of bringing in that money is itself an economic driver for the state that is quite significant. Some highlights of how we've achieved those. I'm very happy to report that our fall enrollment for fall 2021 across the system, our headcount enrollment increased for the first time in a decade in pandemic conditions, defying all national trends of enrollment decreases. 4 campuses were up in the fall. UH Manoa experienced its largest increase since 2003, so almost 20 years of 6%, welcoming the largest first-time freshman class in history. UH Hilo was up for the first time in almost 10 years, and Leeward and Windward community colleges were also up. The community colleges have struggled with headcount credit enrollment, and that's no secret, and that has been the case across the country. Our enrollment declines for headcount credit students in our community colleges are far smaller, though, than the national averages. I think we're probably less than half, closer to a quarter of the decline in community college credit enrollment in California alone. What the community colleges have done, which has been a remarkable achievement, is they have really focused on workforce development for those who are unemployed and underemployed. Those are numbers that do not show up in the traditional headcount credit enrollment numbers, and they also don't show up in tuition dollars because so much of that work has been funded with extramural grants and with philanthropy. And I know they'd be happy to answer questions about that. Philanthropy is going gangbusters. We did a significant realignment about 2 or 3 years ago. Since that time, we have much greater alignment between the UH Foundation and the University of Hawaii. Last year, we went over 100 million, which is one of our largest totals, probably the largest in any year without one of our unicorn gifts, as we call them, such as a Jay Scheidler gift. We have an exciting announcement coming up that I can't say anything about today, but you will certainly see it. In addition to that 100 million in philanthropic funding, our extramural funding, as I mentioned, we hit just over 485 million, didn't quite make our record, but the only time we beat that was when there was substantial increased research funding in the Obama Stimulus Act. And right now I will say that both our philanthropic funding and our extramural funding are looking up for this year relative to where we were last year at this time. This is not funding that runs our operations. I need to make that clear. So we cannot substitute a research grant to pay our electric bills or in general to teach an English or math class, but they do enhance our mission and they do serve the state of Hawaii. The philanthropic funds are mostly for research and scholarships for students. We are also engaged in many ways in serving the people of Hawaii, and that is the other part of our mission: instruction, research, and service. I'll just mention a few of the ways in which UH is stepping up for a leadership role, particularly in time of pandemic, when our expertise is really needed. One is that UH has been asked by our congressional delegation, by the governor's office, and by the legislature to take the lead on broadband. There are literally hundreds of millions of dollars of federal funds coming into the state, and UH is being asked to help coordinate that, not for our university's broadband needs, but for the state of Hawaii needs. Second area where we're very active is in trying to help with the Red Hill challenges. We're looking at setting up a testing lab that's underway now, eventually to achieve EPA certification. I think some of you are aware that we have been sending water samples to the mainland for testing, which is both slower, and we have also had situations in which the samples were damaged and we didn't get results at all. We're also looking at issues relating to hydrology and geology to understand exactly where, if contaminants go in the soil, they are likely to enter our water systems, whether wells or aquifers or shafts. We have the best expertise in the world to help answer those kinds of questions, and answering those questions is absolutely critical to understand where we need to do testing and where we need to be doing regular monitoring. I will also mention the area of health, where we stepped up to help with contact tracing when that was needed. And right now we're doing substantial work on training community health workers who are assisting some of those communities that need help the most. And our modelers are the ones who are doing forward-looking modeling as best they can. And those are the data that General Hara of Ha'ima tells me are most critical to him. So let me stop there, and I think we will have people available to answer questions about any of that. Now let me turn to the budget. And as I think all of you know, we are statutorily, we provide a budget request to both the governor and to the legislature. And that is what is called the Board of Regents budget. So we've provided you both the Board of Regents budget. I'll summarize that first, and then I'll summarize the changes in the governor's budget. So our supplemental budget request is really pretty simple. We've requested restoration of the general funds that were cut, and it's just the numbers that were cut to restore them to the places from which they were cut. So that's the first 6 items that you see for general fund restoration. The next 2 items are athletics funding. That is also just restoration This is money that was formerly in the base budget that came out of the base budget and was in non-recurring and then was dropped altogether last year. We'd like to get that $4 million restored, which is split across both Manoa and UH Hilo. The Pisces funding is new money to us, but not new money to the state. The legislature last year statutorily moved the Pisces program from DBED to UH Hilo. It is based on Hawai'i Island. I think most of you are familiar with the program. In the flurry of activity, the funding was not moved, but the program was. So we've tried to carry that program over this past year, and we would like the funding restored at the level it was at DBED. And our actual only new request in the Board of Regents budget was for positions and dollars for creative media at UH West Oahu. And this is funding for bodies, both our faculty positions and staff, both to teach the courses in what is, I believe, the fastest growing, one of the two fastest growing programs at UH West Oahu. Cybersecurity, which you supported last year, is also very fast going. But this will also help us support the beautiful new building that I think many of you have toured, including opening it up for students from across the UH system as we begin to exit from pandemic conditions. So that was our Board of Regents submittal. Following the governor's receipt of that budget, we had a conversation, and he shared with me the promising conditions of the state. And what you see below that is the governor's budget. What he added to that is a number of new initiatives around areas of workforce development in areas of need and economic diversification. So there's an initiative for additional instructors statewide for nursing to help address the nursing shortage. There is a program for expanding our medical residency program. We have requested this before, not successfully, but as I think most of you know, the best predictor of where a doc will practice is where they do their residency. So we would like to expand those opportunities on the neighbor islands. We also have an initiative to increase teacher workforce education. This was a quick proposal from the UH Manoa College of Ed, but we are also looking at a more comprehensive statewide program that we have not yet fully planned, which would on a statewide basis look at over a series of years eliminating the teacher shortage. The governor was interested in areas of IT and cybersecurity workforce. And so we have this almost 1.575 million includes faculty positions at UH Manoa and UH Hilo. And it also includes the Leap Start, pilot of the Leap Start program. Chair Dela Cruz, this is the program we talked about at the workshop that you convened in the auditorium about IT and cybersecurity workforce development to engage UH students at multiple campuses with workplace experience while they're learning. The last two that I'll mention, one is this is equipment for creative media at UH Manoa to help focus on their digital animation and some of the more technical aspects of creative media. The computer labs at UH Manoa for creative media are simply obsolete at this point, and that's one of the areas they requested help. At Manoa, as at UH West Oahu, this is one of our fastest growing programs. So the two creative media requests were combined in the governor's budget for Hilo and West Oahu. And support for the aviation program at UH Hilo. And this is to expand the into the pilot training aspect of it with the simulators that you have supported in the past with CIP funding. Lastly, let me mention this 21.7 million in repairs, maintenance, and equipment. This is basically cash-funded CIP. This was the governor's initiative to reduce load on debt financing and forward fund some of the CIP requests that we had. Lastly, let me mention the CIP budget, and you can see the Regent CIP budget and the governor's budget. In general, there's pretty good alignment. The two Manoa projects the governor did not support. That is, we're looking at Hamilton Library, and in particular, as we look at the future of work, we see that as a hub for many activities moving forward on the campus, not just as a place where we store books. And we also are looking at a central administration and parking facility. Our goal with the Manoa long-range plan is to get parking off of the central part of campus and actually make it much more pedestrian friendly. But in general, you'll see the rest of the requests line up pretty nicely. There's a decline in the total, but as I mentioned, there is an increase on the cash repair and maintenance side in the operating budget. So lastly, let me just say that while the case numbers are certainly up, today was the highest case count for the state of Hawaii at any time during the pandemic. We are also looking to move to the future. We're not looking to go back to 2019. We are positioning ourselves strongly, both with what we prioritize and how we execute our work. We think it is an exciting time. We're very optimistic about our future. We are pleased that the state's economy has recovered much more quickly than expected, but we are not letting up on making the hard decisions that we know send many members of our community to you with complaints that their favorite program may not be a priority any longer as we look at what the state actually needs from us. So with that, chairs, members, we'd be glad to entertain any questions.
Members, questions? Okay. What's that? I just had a quick question. You know, in your opening overview, the plan calls for restraint from business as usual expenditures. But the university is looking to blanket restore 42.5 million. So how do you reconcile the board saying, I guess this would probably be more of a question for Chair Moore. How do you reconcile trying to achieve restraint from business as usual, but at the same time, just blanket restoring?
The money will not go back to the exact same places on our campuses. So I think that's the answer. So at each of our units, we'll be talking with the board on Thursday about what we have been referring to as our post-pandemic planning, talking about both the investments and the constraints that we are placing within our units. We do have the authority, as you know, Chair Dela Cruz, to shift resources between units as we need to. We are willing to do that and have done that in the past. But at this point, given where we were, we thought this was the most prudent way to deal with the processes under which we operate.
Okay, so is that information going to be public after Thursday, where you can share with us which programs
Yes.
you're no longer going to fund and which programs you're going to?
We will have some of that available for some of our units. It varies by unit, but yes.
Okay, we'll follow up with a written request so that you can provide that in more detail.
Will do.
On that. Just, thank you, President. Just to follow up on the chair. So in addition to not being business as usual for the budget, what about in some of the operations? I know talked about classifications, talked about workloads, we've talked about a number of things. And so can you give us an update on how we're progressing and how it's going to be, we're going to be changing and not business as usual? Sure,
I'll just give you a few examples, and again, we'll we are planning this conversation on Thursday with the Board of Regents. So one is organizational changes. I think you're familiar, some of this started before the pandemic, but we have certainly continued through the pandemic as we look at centralizing operations. I'll say that's not especially popular among our campuses. Everybody feels like they're the ones who are going to be centralized, but we do believe we can be more efficient and consistent in our practices with more centralization than we have today. So we can give you some examples of that. Some of them are large and some of them are smaller, from major academic reorganizations at Manoa to at the system level. We've consolidated the administrative support functions for our IT shop, which is actually the largest single unit at the system level, with the system-wide administrative operations under Vice President Young. In terms of workload, we have, as we have shared with you in the past, Chair Kim, we're now in the second year of implementing what we call the faculty workload assignment template. And this is a way of really tracking the work of each individual faculty member on an annual basis. Without going into too much detail in this particular hearing, our board policies and contracts call for faculty members at the community colleges to teach 27 credits or equivalent, and at our universities to teach 24 credits or equivalent. And we're looking at monitoring exactly how those equivalents are assigned and tracked, because the work that I've mentioned in my opening remarks, our faculty at our universities do much more than just teach credit classes. They're also contributing in many ways. We're also looking at our classification system. Chair Kim, as I shared with you when we talked on Friday, we will share with you a report in response to Senate Concurrent Resolution 201, which covered some of the same ground as the 10-year PIG that was convened by the Board of Regents. And we think much of the improvement that we can make will be around clarifying our classifications, and with that, looking at assignment of work for faculty in some of the classifications that are less commonly found in other higher education institutions.
What's your estimated increase in tuition fees due to the increased enrollment?
I do not know if we have calculated that number yet. We tend to budget conservatively, but we can certainly get that back to you. We will have, I don't know if Calvert has it handy. I don't know that we have our first semester's numbers to compare to last semester.
Sorry, Chair, this is a Calvert. We don't have that yet. We do have estimated tuition numbers that we were forecasting at the start of the fiscal year, but obviously that precedes the actual start of the primary fall semester. So it would be better for us to respond after this meeting.
Okay. President, you also mentioned the 100 million in philanthropic funding. Do you have
Yes.
Do you have a list of the accounts in which they were deposited?
We can give you a breakdown of which units. I think we have that. That would probably be the most useful. And we can break down if it's research or for student scholarships.
Okay. On table 10, I think it's page, not sure if everybody has the same pages, page 19 of 137. There was about there was $667,380 transferred into Small Business Development Corporation. Do you know what efforts were a result of that transfer, and what impacts resulted from these funds being transferred into the corporation?
I believe this is their standard operating budget, and this is used as a federal match. I don't know if Bonnie or Calais.
Yes, this is something that we do every year. We move the money.
Can you
between
just
RCUH.
state your name and title, please?
I'm sorry. This is Bonnie Irwin, Chancellor of UH Hilo. SBDC reports directly to me. And this is an annual way of operating for SBDC, that we move money from one account to another, but it's not anything different than we've done in previous years, I don't believe. And Calais Raposa, Vice Chancellor, is also on, and he can answer in more detail if you need.
Okay, maybe you can send us a history of the last 5 years, just so we can see a pattern.
Certainly, we'll be happy to do that.
You have a question?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, President, for your overview. Certainly appreciate the fact that, UH is our community partner. That was what the state anticipated when we created the university system. And as legislators, we are stewards of the public funds, and we have to manage that. So, with that said, can you share with us as to what percentage of our students are now in-person classes? The university?
It varies unit by unit, and as of today, I'm going to estimate probably in the range of 10 to 20%, primarily the clinicals, the shops, the CTE, the hands-on. We made a decision in December based on the numbers that we saw to defer most of our in-person to online for the first 2 weeks of the semester. And this morning we huddled over the current numbers, as I think today is the highest case count in the state's history. And we are deferring the return to in-person for 1 more week. So January 31st, this is not something we will be reviewing week by week, but based on the best information and data we could get from our experts, we believe that the state will be in a substantially better position by January 31st. And that's when we will return to the published modes of instruction. That said, even for this spring, we are not where we were in 2019. For example, UH West Oahu was about 45% online before the pandemic, and that's by nature of the statewide services that they provide for online and distance education. So we can give you a summary for each major unit, if that would be helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate that. What is the balance of the tuition special fund? I know the auditor did a audit in 2020, February 2020, and
I don't have it in front of me, so Calbert's probably looking it up. House Finance asked us this. I think it was about 330 million-ish, and it has been pretty consistent for the last few years.
okay.
Is that correct,
So-
Calbert?
As of, that's total funds as of June 30th.
Okay, and then you have your revolving funds, your trust funds, and the auditor said it was about $509 million total back in 2020. So still about that amount, Calbert?
Yeah, As of June 30th, 2021, I couldn't tell you what the specific balances are, but on the order of magnitude, I think it's consistent to the balances that the auditors report identified back in June 30th, 2020.
Okay. And this you don't have to answer right now, but can you tell us and send it to us in writing as to whether or not the university complied with some of the recommendations made in the auditor's report on some of the special funds that they felt did not meet the criteria set forth? You can get back to us.
We can provide the formal written response, but just as a precursor, we will be replying that the university has complied and recommended in accordance with all of the auditor's recommendations. Most of those recommendations were actually taken up by the legislature during last session.
Okay, thank you. S397 special fund, how much is that? What are the salaries and positions in S397?
Sorry, let me pull that up for you. Or actually, let me pull it up before I respond.
So this is where the state pays the fringe for positions funded by special funds, which the law says that special funds are supposed to pay their own fringe, but we won't go into all the reasons why. So I just kind of said that so the public understands.
Right. So
S397 is.
So Chair Kim, it's not technically an account with a balance, but these are the state appropriated general fund positions for which we no longer receive enough G funds to pay those salaries. We have embraced our commitment to fund operations with tuition. And so we view this as a bit of cost sharing where the UH pays the salary and the state pays the fringe. And I'll just note that UH has no control over the fringe benefit costs because those are determined by state policy and how the state chooses on a yearly basis to address some of the OPEB and UTF kinds of costs, which then get attributed over to fringe. But we have asked the governor to introduce a bill to correct the statute or change the statute so that this practice is clearly in conformance with statute.
Okay, but how much are we paying in the fringe, Calbert?
Yes, so for fiscal year 2021, so it's the fiscal year that concluded June 30th, 2021, it was just about under $10 million, 9.5 actually. And so just for an order of magnitude comparison, university has been working, I guess the numbers down for the amount of S397 over the last several years. So in fiscal year 19, it was about 14.9 million. And in fiscal year 20, it actually creeped up to 15.9 million. And then in 2021, it's down to 9.5 million. But historically, it actually had peaked up, above 18, 20 million at some point. So this number has been working down.
Okay, so if the fringe is approximately $10 million and you have a balance in your tuition special fund of 330 million, then why is it that the university can't pay the fringe?
Well, first of all, this S397 is for positions that are in the budget as general fund authorized, and they should have been general fund appropriated, or at least at some point in time, historically, these positions were general fund appropriated. So the use of the tuition to pay for these positions is I'll characterize it as a cost sharing approach, because really they should have been appropriated with general funds. So using tuition fees to pay for the salaries is the larger portion of the expense, because the fringe, which is continual to be paid for with general funds, would have been paid for with general funds anyway, because these are general fund authorized, and should have been general fund appropriated positions. They may
Yes.
have been at one point in time general fund appropriated historically.
Yes, but the legislature over the years have decided not to fund these positions. And there are a lot of positions that is unfunded. And instead of doing away with the positions, the university have asked that we leave it vacant and don't fund it instead of doing away with the positions because you don't want to recreate it. So the legislature, I believe, has compromised in the sense that we won't take away the positions, we'll leave it vacant. So it's been the university's decision to fund those positions. And I know that S397 in the past, and we may not agree with how it came about and what was the agreement, but it was a very smaller amount. And at the time, the university said they couldn't afford to pay for the fringe. But if you carry a $330 million surplus pretty much yearly over the last few years, it's been pretty constant. And the fringes is 10 million. And every other agency that uses special funds to pay for positions have to pay their own fringe. Why is it the university can't pay the 10 million?
So the other agencies, Chair, pay the fringe on positions that are created as special funded positions, as do we. So again, these are not positions in our auxiliaries where the programs are relatively self-financing. These are the positions that represent our core mission that were appropriated by the legislature for the purposes of public higher education.
Right.
So
But you have the money. You have the money to pay, correct?
We have a balance, but a balance is not the same as a recurring operating budget.
But you've had a recurring balance of about approximately 330 million, correct?
That is correct. And we
Okay.
also have reserve policies established by the Board of Regents so that we can support ourselves in a time of crisis. If there's a federal government shutdown, we need to carry our research program until such time as the federal government returns to business and begins paying its bills. So these are the things that we face that many other agencies don't, so that we can maintain continuity of operations in challenging times.
Okay, but again, you're talking about 10 million out of 330 million. So,
Well, I think that 10 million this year is low because the state did not make, correct me if I'm wrong, Calvert, the state did not make the same level of deposits into some of the post-employment. So this thing has fluctuated over the past 5 or 6 years, anywhere between 40 to over 60%. And some of the projections that Calvert has seen suggested could go to 70 and even 80%.
okay, let me move on. What is the deficit in our student housing last year? Did we have a deficit?
I don't believe we had an operating. I don't know if Sandy, are you on? Sandy French?
Yes. Yes.
Was there an
I don't-
operating deficit in housing? I think last year we were okay because we returned to full capacity, right? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Last fiscal year, we were not at full capacity.
Yes, and there was an operating deficit, and that was because of the loss of capacity.
What was the deficit?
I don't have the exact number. I believe it was around 15 million, but I can get you an exact number.
So we had a $15 million deficit, and yet we were using student housing money to carry the innovation center. And we weren't able to, when the students complained of leaks, power outage, and aging dorm rooms, we haven't done anything on that.
if I can say a couple of things, Talbert, when did we stop supporting the Y project with housing funds? I believe it was prior to last year, right?
Yes, it was. I believe
But
there
what was the total that we supplemented the Atherton out of the student housing? Over $1 million, right?
It was over $1 million. I believe it was closer to 1.2. And I wouldn't characterize it totally as supplementing, because student housing was the one that actually originally signed the lease contract to lease Atherton. So, and actually since then, the amount that they've had to pay on the lease has been whittled down and picked up by other sources, namely System, until I believe October of 2020, when System was contributing on their lease and not housing. So, but prior to that time, the total amount that housing has had to net pay on that lease was on the order of magnitude about 1.2 million.
Okay, speaking of deficits, what's the deficits in athletics? What was it last year and what is the projection for this year?
Hang on just a second. So last year was 1.4 million is what I show. This year, hang on just a second. Let me see if I have it handy. Right now, I should say we can use our relief funds for revenue shortfalls. So that 1.4 million includes, revenue shortfalls associated with COVID only. So to the extent there was a structural deficit beforehand, there continues to be one, but we did provide relief with federal funds, as we are doing for housing as well, Chair Kim, with our federal funds. Right now, the projected loss for this fiscal year without relief is about 5.6 million. I have not seen the analysis of how much of that is due to COVID.
When you say relief, you're talking about COVID, the COVID monies.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, but prior to even this and prior to COVID, the athletics had a cumulative deficit at one point of 20 million or more. Is that correct?
That would be the cumulative debt.
Right, the cumulative debt. And I believe that you called for a systematic pay down of the debt of 700,000 a year for 21 years. And that it would have started in 2018, but apparently it didn't.
No, it has been.
It has been.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, this is Calvert. Just to be clear, since you folks are kind of throwing out, accumulated debt, the number actually represents an internal accounting for an accumulated shortfall.
Right.
So the reason why I want to make that distinction is that all of the university's vendors and contractors have been paid. It's not like no one is getting paid. This is an internal bookkeeping arrangement. Thank you.
Okay, according to what I got, it's a summary of university special funds as of June 30, 2020, provided to the legislature under HRS 304, showed a beginning cash balance of minus 27 million for athletic special fund and an unencumbered ending cash balance of minus 30.89 million. And then it says, the independent auditors report to the Board of Regents. During the years ended June 30, 2021 and 2020, borrowings from the university totaled 26.1 million and 17.1 million respectively. And in addition, the report said the financial condition of the athletic department continues to be fragile due to the ongoing struggle to generate operating and fundraising revenues while continuing to manage operating expenses. And that now with COVID, it's even more going to impact the department. Has any of that changed?
I don't believe we disputed the auditor's report.
Okay, that's very true. I have a lot more questions, but I will pause and let others ask.
Thank you, Mr. Luca.
Aloha, President Lassner. Thank you for your overview. I was heartened to hear during your presentation that you mentioned about economic diversification. You talked about innovation and entrepreneurship. So we've been having meetings and trying to identify the particular industries that might have some bright future in the horizon. And I'm wondering whether you've done some discussions internally and about industries that you should be focused on, maybe the top 3, if you don't mind. And is it reflected and aligned with your budget?
Thank you. That's a great question. So yes, we have talked about where we see those opportunities. Maybe just a few general comments. One is we want to encourage innovation and entrepreneurship across the university. So this is not just trying to lure somebody in, but we think like a Google or a Microsoft, but we think our students have the opportunity to create jobs as well as get jobs. So that's a push that we're making as part of our post-pandemic planning and other activities to really up our game in innovation and entrepreneurship across the system and across our campuses. In terms of the specific areas where we think there are opportunities for growth, we do have we have identified them. So one is obviously creative media. What the industry tells us is that if we had more private production facilities, they could create more programming here. And by programming, I mean a variety of digital content. So for that, we're working very hard with potential private developer, but we can see that as we invest in our creative media programs, our students are following and enrolling in those programs. We believe, as does the governor, and I think Senator De La Cruz has been leading on some of this work as well, that the areas of IT and cybersecurity are excellent opportunities for us. Those are areas in which our students do well. There are jobs, particularly in cybersecurity, as we look at, and sorry, I'm trying to pull up a more detailed listing as I go through this. An area where there are employers such as the National Security Administration with whom we work. We think there are opportunities in data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning. That's one of the areas where, as part of the governor's initiative, we're looking at investment. We think food and agriculture is an area for economic opportunity. We're happy our community colleges are supporting Senator De La Cruz's initiative for the Value Added Center, initially in Wahiawa, potentially in other places. We think agricultural technology is an opportunity, and we think we can be the center of tropical agriculture and create opportunities. As much as possible, We want to look at these areas as opportunities for what Carl Bonham and others refer to as the traded economy. That is where we can bring in money from other places as well as just recirculate money within our economy. We think areas of climate change, resilience, energy, and conservation, we have amazing expertise in all of those areas, some of the best in the world. And again, we think we can bring in money for those things, and we can also create economic opportunity. And when you see some of the incubators and accelerators in town, they are very successful in bringing in money, and many of those projects involve our faculty and our students. The areas where we also think we can generate revenue, not quite sure yet what the actual businesses are. As we watch the nation pivot to the Pacific, we're looking at how do we do better at positioning Hawaii as the face of the United States in the Pacific. So this used to be something that really only DoD was interested in, but increasingly Department of State, our congressional delegation, and others. Obviously, astronomy and space sciences. This is why I think many on Hawaii Island are so supportive of Pisces. And depending on one's belief system, astronomy is certainly a competitive edge for us. And there are opportunities for businesses around technologies of sensors and other ancillary economic opportunity across the islands. And lastly, let me mention disaster management. This is not something that anyone wants to be great at, but we have some really strong programs that do create export opportunities for the state. And we have extramural programs within the university that are regularly providing support to Asia Pacific and beyond in other parts of the world.
Okay, thank you. But you're talking about alignment, so I note that at a cursory glance at some of the line items, there were some provisions made for creative media as well as IT. But I'm wondering about tourism, only because that continues to be our economic driver, but I didn't hear you say tourism at all. And my anecdotal information is that we're not really investing in the TIM school. In fact, there are a lot of vacancies. My understanding is there's some still internal struggles there. Would you clarify for that? Are we throwing the baby with the bathwater as it is right now, despite the fact that it is our #1 industry?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So this would be an example of a change that we made that resonates with some, but not others. I don't have Dean Rowley on, but the tourism school used to be part of our College of Business before it was the Scheidler College of Business. And it was one of the top 3 tourism schools in the world, not just in the country, in the world. In the 90s, it began to fall off the chart. I won't say it was because it was separated from Scheidler, or then still the College of Business, but it was a relatively small school. At the time, it had 10 to 15 faculty, as opposed to most of our colleges have hundreds of faculty. We were also finding that it was not as responsive to the industry, and that's what industry leaders told me. That is not always the same story from within. After substantial discussions, we did merge the Travel Industry Management School back into the College of Business. It's been there for just about 2 years now. We can give you an update on what has happened since, but we are looking at expanding the program. In spite of the freeze that we put on, we did provide permission for some recruitment in that. We have also struggled to keep people, but I believe we have begun to turn it around. There are not, I'm sorry, Michael just texted me, Provost Bruno, that 3 of the 4 hires that we approved in Scheidler are for the TIM school. So we are investing. We are hoping that we can create more opportunities for engagement with the business community. That's something that Dean Rowley has been really good at, that engagement, including private fundraising. They also have had an exceptionally strong alumni program, and that's what we're looking toward. If you have specific concerns, we'd be glad to take a look at them, and we could have Dean Rowley come in and talk with you as well.
I think that would be sufficient.
And I think 3 hires is about as much as any one department got approval to fill.
Is it true most of them are from China? That's my
The
understanding.
The faculty?
The faculty. I could be wrong. That's just the rumor I heard.
I don't know the answer to that, but the recruitments are wide open.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
I guess though, President, at some point, what we would like to hear is that the university is looking at these 5, 6, whatever, however many programs the regions believe we should focus on, and have an aspirational goal of being within the top 5, top 10 in the world. And what do we do to support that? I mean, the two. The response we get is we want to be a research university, but we never hear about, okay, we want the tourism school to be within the top 3 again, where it once was, or whatever and what would it take to do that?
I think we would happily, this is Dean Rowley has really dug in on this, and I don't remember if he said top 3, but he definitely is developing plans to return it to one of the best in the world. I just don't have the number handy, Chair.
Okay, but that kind of language or aspirational goals is what I feel we're looking to hear from, not just what you guys are looking at for tourism, but what are the top 3 or 4 programs, or dozen, whatever the regions feels are the priorities. We know where we want to go in supporting our economy. You talked about cyber, but if we were to hear from the university that we want to be the best, most competitive cyber program in the country, and this is what it's going to take, I think we could all get behind that. But I don't hear that from the university.
Fair enough.
Just kind of to follow on that. Thank you, President. We are a research one university, and you say you brought in close to $500,000. And following on what the chair is talking about is what are we doing, and so that $500,000, where are those monies coming from? Your extramural funds, but what are we then, the state need to be supporting so that we are number 1 in the world class, not only in nation, but in the world, whether it's renewable energy or health or cybersecurity or agriculture. We need to have that so that when we put monies in for research, because you're building a knowledge base to attract faculty, to attract students, to then build up that base. Everything is scattered, and I know because when I was at the UH, that was the thing, you give everybody everything. And I think now we really need to focus on what is it that will make us world-class in terms of faculty, in terms of knowledge creation, in terms of teaching, and service to the community. I talk about health, and we've talked about this of, how do you do that? Getting health on the, you helped us in terms of the contact tracing training, but in terms of the data and working with the UH so that we do know what we're doing and how we plan forward in terms of policy development. So we'd like to hear from you on that and some of the faculty in schools.
So Senator, I'll just make a couple brief remarks, and I see that Vice President Sirmos has unmuted his video. I don't know what the correct term is for that, and probably will add something. But the areas I mentioned are areas in which we believe we can make a real difference. So we didn't pick something out of the blue like Egyptology to become the best at Egyptology. These are areas: ocean, atmospheric and earth sciences, conservation, environmental microbiology, astronomy, climate change and resilience, energy, where we are one of the best in the world and we want to remain as one of the best in the world. We don't, point taken, Chair Dela Cruz, we may not say those things to you as often as we need to, but in general, we try not to come to you for everything we need to do. I'm trying to be more accountable for the resources, and this is the approach of, restoration of our budget, and we will continue to actively move it around. So nobody within the university can simply fill a position of any kind simply because someone retired or someone resigned. Every single position is reviewed for whether that is needed, where it is needed, is there a higher priority somewhere else? And that's what I mean by not returning to the way we do business.
I think we're asking for President, what we're asking for is what are those top 3,
Yes.
5 areas? And not necessarily that you have to come to us, with, we need money
Right.
for this or that, but really this is the plan of going forward of what
Right.
we are world-class in, so that all of us know that continuously going forward, that we can support what your efforts are. And we could see in your extramural awards coming in from federal and other sources that you're getting funding for those areas as well, so that it is seen as, moving us really forward as world-class. So if we could have that as a response
Well,
to a
maybe
question.
what we can do is get Chair Moore and to see what
The board.
the regents, how are the regents dealing with this issue in regards to top priorities, wanting to be globally competitive or nationally competitive? Which programs are you guys going to focus on? What's the plan to get there?
Actually, this is on the agenda for Thursday, so we will have a considerable discussion on this matter. We have discussed in the past where the university ought to be excellent. And as the president said, we've got a major discussion on it day after tomorrow.
You haven't discussed this prior to that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, can you share us with the discussion then?
Well, it pretty much agrees with, the president has discussed with us the priorities that he just reviewed with you. So there is nothing in there that is surprising.
Okay, Senator Kidani.
Thank you, Chair. My question is related to the declining enrollment at UH West Oahu. And I don't know if all the campuses have seen declines over the past 4 or 5 years, but for Randy Moore and the Board of Regents, do they review this kind of data to see if the chancellors are good fits for the campuses?
Well, I think I've got a couple of questions there. One is, do we look at the enrollment trends? And the answer is yes. Do we look at, is the chancellor the appropriate for the campus? I think we look to the president to make that determination.
Well, then I should be asking that of President Lasner then.
Yes.
Am I asked that question, Senator?
Yes, sir. Are you going to pass it on to somebody else?
No, I am not. I do annual discussions with all of the, so the chancellors of the 2 regional comprehensives, UH West Oahu and UH Hilo, report to me. The chancellors of the community colleges report to Vice President LaCroix. But I do review the performance of all of those individuals annually.
So I guess it would be better if I could see, and I don't have the information in front of me. I just have for UH West Oahu, basically the enrollment has trended downward, for the last 5 years, which is about the time that this current chancellor took over. And I'm not sure if if you have breakdowns by the 9 majors as to what their enrollment counts are, so you can determine which programs are still doing well and which are not. And given the decline in enrollments, when would you look at offering something else? I do know that West Oahu used to have a pretty good nursing program, but that was cut not soon after the new chancellor came onto the program. And, I guess in hindsight, that was probably a really big mistake, as nurses are in shortage and has been for a while, just as teachers have. So my question to you is what's the criteria when you look at the track record for the past 4 or 5 years?
So I look at it across a number of areas. Certainly headcount credit enrollment is one of them. And I've had this conversation with multiple chancellors. UH West Oahu is actually relatively stable at around 3,000-ish students. Other campuses have also had declining enrollments. That's not the only one. So with each of them, I tend to talk about strategies for addressing the challenges. And as has been mentioned, with all of our campuses, we need to align the resources to where the students are, not to where we wish they were.
So looking at a decision to remove a major like the nursing program, is that done only by the chancellor, or do you guys get involved, knowing the trend of what is good for our community? And like I said, teachers and nurses have been in a shortfall for many years.
That one was my understanding, and either chancellor can jump in here, but that was actually a joint program with UH Hilo. And my understanding is that it was not perceived as successful from really either one. So one of the aspects that we're looking at is how do we work together across the system, and whether or not UH West Oahu needs its own nursing program or is a location to educate and train nurses for that side of the island. Then what's the best way to get that accomplished is probably a better question. And I see both chancellors have jumped in with their video. Do either or both of you want to comment on the nursing program experience?
Yeah, aloha, thank you. This is Maynette Benham, the Chancellor at UH West Oahu. Thank you for that question, Senator Kadani. The nursing program was actually funded by a Title III grant. It only had a 5-year window. It was 2 years at UH West Oahu. We prepared them sort of like a nursing boot camp with all of the general courses, and then they after testing, matriculated over to a 2-year program with UH Hilo. And so that happened during the duration of the grant. There were some issues with faculty staffing at the time, so we could not continue it. However, I see Chancellor Irwin on the line as well. We have been talking over the last year, and just recently our vice chancellors of academic affairs have also been talking about renewing our 2+2 program, as well as offering UH Hilo students an opportunity for off-ramps if nursing doesn't work out for them, to go into more allied health sciences as well. Again, new faculty, we now have MNHS, so we have a stronger foundation to actually support the nursing program. Chancellor Irwin, you have any comments on your end?
Yes, this is Bonnie Irwin from UH-HELO, and I would characterize it about the same way. It was a temporary grant-funded program that we then had some challenges in sustaining, but we're back in conversation about how to bring it back and looking forward to bringing our faculty into the conversation to see if we can relaunch the program, because we are fully aware that nursing and allied health generally are state needs. And that is also one of the reasons that you see nursing positions in the budget. Because if HELO is to partner again with West Oahu, we need the faculty support to do so. So I was very happy to see those in the governor's suggested budget for UH.
I would really like to see the numbers, like you said, it was a 2-and-2 program. So the first 2 years at West Oahu, what the enrollment was during the program and what the enrollment was after they finished the 2 years at West Oahu and had to move on to HELO. Because as you guys may know, the vision for UH West Oahu was to have a campus on that side of the island for those students there who could not afford to take the long trip to the Manoa campus. And certainly I don't think they could afford to, leave their homes and reside in HELO for 2 years for the second 2 years. So maybe when you relook at the program, there'd be something more definitive that you can give us information on, because I in hindsight now, boy, could we have used those graduates. Thank you.
Yes. So Senator Kidani, what we have been trying to work on this for a while. We've maintained on grant money the nurse who actually led our program here on campus. By the way, the last 2 years, our students actually took classes here from UH-HELO here on our campus and visited UH-HELO during the summer for a short period of time. So that was a really nice partnership at the time. So we hope to continue that.
Was that virtual classes then, or did the instructors come onto the campus?
There were HELO instructors that were either online or they had hired instructors here that taught here at UH West Oahu.
Is yours on nursing?
The program was designed particularly because of the concerns you raised. We did not want the students to have to relocate, except for very temporary short stints away from West Oahu.
Sure. I have one follow-on question. Just when you have grants like this, and if you see it's effective, what do you do in terms of evaluating the program to say, we really need this, this is what's happened? Senator Kidani's asking how many students, where does that report go? Or does it build on something, or you just do it because you got a grant and now the money's dried up, so we're not doing it anymore? I think we need to see some results of programs that are effective to say this is something worth keeping and why. So it would be helpful to get that kind of information as well.
Yes, I think a lot of the grantors really want us to sustain, not become dependent on the grant monies, but to sustain and institutionalize the work. Again, one of the reasons why this wasn't continued is because we did have issues with staffing this particular program. It didn't have the resources to continue that.
So where does that evaluation go? I mean, is it just, okay, we don't have the staff, so too bad, too sad, goodbye?
Yeah,
so we need something more sustained in terms of us knowing as well what happens with these programs, so that if they are important, we can follow up. Thank you. So it'd be good to have that, especially in light of the needs of the community. What needs are they serving, and why is it important?
Thank you. Well, we'll make sure that our assessments on issues of programs like this are shared more broadly.
I have a follow-up. First of all, I know that you folks fight for other programs, so I just don't understand why this program wasn't fought for. But speaking of the drop-in enrollment that Senator Kidani brought up, what is the status of the EAB program that we spent millions on at West Oahu and we didn't increase the enrollment?
So our agreement, and I think there are several of us that do have EAB contracts. We were the newest on the EAB train, and our EAB contract was very small. It was targeted just to first-time freshmen coming in from our high schools. I do just want to correct a misperception that actually our numbers have increased last year. This year, our numbers were COVID hit. We're really hit very hard, but in fall of 2020 to spring of 2021, we had banner numbers. We were just the opposite from all of our cohort members across the nation. We have held our first-time freshman numbers and increased our freshman numbers since our contract with EAB, going into this fall and this spring semester. So EAB has helped us in terms of providing us with the capacity to reach more first-time freshmen across our region on a more regular basis using a variety of digital techniques that we just did not have the bandwidth.
Okay, Chancellor, how much was the EAB? How much did we spend on the EAB? We can't hear you.
You're on mute, Minette.
I'm sorry. I'm looking for my EAB numbers. I don't have it in front of me, but it was, I think the contract, our part of the contract was about, what was it? About 160, 168. I can get that for you. We shared the cost with the UH system.
Yes, and what was the increase? If you can get that to us, because I know we had a complaint that we sent in and was responded to, and the person said that that we didn't get an increase in the enrollment, and had we taken that money and give it as scholarships, we probably would have had more students. Okay, thank you.
Chair, I'll just say that multiple campuses realized we needed to up our game in enrollment management. It's a modern practice, it's an art and a science. And we decided that making one-time investment in that external support would help. It was an investment in our staff that would pay off for the long run. So it wasn't just a one-time pay somebody money and you'll get more headcount that fall. It was a set of practices as well, modeled from a company that's considered to be, one of the best in the world.
You know, this meeting is public and people are texting us. It says, Manette is mixed up, enrollment is down. So why are we getting that? And it says that West Oahu declined since 2018, and that you did not have a banner year last year.
Last year, I'm looking at the numbers.
This question is for the Chancellor, Mr. President.
I don't know who is texting you the numbers, but I could ask I'm just looking for my numbers right now, but our numbers have been up. This year, absolutely, our numbers did go down, our fall numbers, as well as our return numbers in the spring. But the academic year 2021, it was up.
Okay, well, I don't know.
2020.
2020, 2021. That's, sorry. But 21, 22, we are down.
Senator Keith Agaran.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I guess my question is along the lines of the entire discussion this morning, and that's in providing these opportunities that you're talking about and the way the university can do it. I assume this is a system-wide issue and it's going to be dealt with on a system-wide basis. So given your experience during the pandemic, what do you plan to do with the university centers at all of the neighbor islands? campuses, and what constraints are there to expand opportunities through the university centers to work on 4-year degrees or to work on programs like the Kapi'olani MedTech program and make it available at some of the other neighbor islands.
I don't know if Vice President LaCroix wants to jump in. She and I talk about this regularly. You can talk.
Hi, one of the things that we're working on.
That
right
is
now-
Vice President Erica LaCroix for Community
Sorry
College.
about that. Erica LaCroix, Vice President of Community Colleges. One of the things we're working on currently is really looking at each of our 7 campuses and all of our centers to make sure that they are organized appropriately by looking at our enrollment numbers as well, what programs we should be offering in duplicate places, and how can we better deliver those and have more programs available at those centers. So those are active conversations we're having right now. And some of that will be discussed on Thursday at the Board of Regents also.
I guess my specific question was about MedTechs, mainly because I'm aware that all of the hospitals were bringing in travelers, not just for nurses, but also for technicians. And the fact that Kapi'olani is one of the only places that has the training is a constraint on having local residents on each of our neighbor islands who can take those kinds of jobs. And I mean, those jobs are available, and actually, you know, any travelers that you pay for is more expensive than hiring someone local.
So one of the things we're doing with Kapi'olani, because they do have very successful medical programs, is looking at how we can expand those. Some of it is facilities and the uniqueness of those programs and what they need on those different islands. But I am in complete agreement with you that Kapi'olani should take a stronger role in being able to roll that out statewide to address the issue of bringing in travelers.
And I think that's probably another way that you can look at producing nurses too, because I mean I understand where if you had a program on an existing program on a campus, you might want to expand it, but you know, there are other alternatives. I know that we have needs for more nurses as well, and we just don't have the space right now. Thank you, Chair.
I just want to ask the Vice President, the model you're talking about where Kapi'olani would be, let's just say, would be the hub for nursing, and then you would have set to expand the program. Sounds like you're going to have satellite programs that are really Kapi'olani, where it's embedded at Kapi'olani, but you would have satellite programs throughout your other campuses. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I think that's a much more prudent approach instead of us duplicating the same program at every campus. And so I'm looking forward to see what other programs you guys are going to be able to hub and spoke. This is, I think we've talked about this before, where what are the specific hubs at each community college that they can be expert at, and then we can make sure that they have the right facilities. You know, you guys can hire the right staffing. I think it's easier for the private sector to partner with one big program versus lots of small or medium-sized programs. Internships, all these things can be better coordinated. Other than nursing, can you guys send us a list? I know we talked about IT, which might be a little difficult, but there's value added, there's culinary, there's all these other tourism now that we're talking about, there's agriculture. What other programs you guys are looking at? If you can just maybe send that to us in writing, or if not, we'll follow up.
Certainly.
Senator Favela.
There's a couple of things touching on some of this. Is first of all, UH, is that a university or is that a community college?
It's a university.
Since I've been here, President Lesnar, and I said this at the first hearing that I came here to the Senate. We've been having very difficult time on West Oahu in having kids enroll in programs because there's limited space, limited of a lot of things. Since I've been here, I just see a huge amount of money. I keep going to Manoa, and then we don't have as much warm bodies on Manoa campus because I learned that because of my colleagues here. But down on the warm bodies, and this is before COVID, was not up so much in Manoa, but the money-wise in trying to bring programs to the University of West Oahu, where it's high demand, especially in the field that my colleagues was just talking about. We have the most in our community on the west side in demand in these technical jobs, these nursing jobs, that they go to little clinics here and there to get the CNAs because they cannot even get nothing enrollment on their side of the island. So they find these little classes that they can take to get certified to be CNA for now, so they can get to go to the university and probably go up higher into nursing because that's something that they can do right away because it's not being offered. I just don't understand. Do anybody really go out? I mean, I understand you guys get people that work in the school, but do you guys really go on the west side and really find out what do they need? Because I'm hearing that they don't even have enough enrollment for engineering on that side of the island. So it's like totally lopsided. The campus that is not having heavy enrollment, not having heavy demand, but having all of this money going to the campus in refixing buildings, old buildings, air-conditioned buildings, auditoriums and everything. But then the campus is not being utilized in a higher demand on some other campus. And I don't know about the neighbor island. The only reason why I bring this up is because all of last session, as all the kids was telling me in our community when they come to an event that I'm at, that we don't have enough programs on this side of the island for, when I say this side of the island, I mean the west side, West Oahu, then going forward. And I keep seeing the amount of money that's going to Manoa for all these other stuff, but we don't have nothing that's futuristic to add more classes, more programs. I mean, even like the nursing stuff, it's great that we're going to Kapiolani, and then we're going to have a satellite, but when are we going to start having our own stuff? We were satellite at the Leeward College for decades. We finally got their own campus. But then now, here we are again, peace meeting the people on the west side who have their little nursing, engineering, and everything on a slow boat. So I just no, what is your real future as the president of the university for West Oahu and the neighbor islands that have in high demand that you can help improve over the next 5 years?
So I think, Senator, what's tricky about this is understanding demand from both the employer side and the student side, which tends to be associated with specific programs. So I can just tell you that when the creative media building went up at UH West Oahu, all of the complaints at Manoa were, why don't we have a building like that? So the opportunities are distributed around. Culinary is in multiple locations, but Kapiolani has the best facilities. So it's not always at one place, but I think we are committed if we understand where the workforce opportunities are. And Senator Kidani has talked with us about areas of tourism, about Chinese language, certainly creative media, and certainly cybersecurity at UH West Oahu is a booming program. So I think we're happy to continue to work with you and others to identify where those opportunities are and how we can work together as a system. The hub and spoke the hub can be anywhere and the spokes can be anywhere. I think we're really excited to see the community colleges pioneering this approach across those campuses, but we've been doing different models, such as the nursing approach, which was the 2+2 for a while. So please don't, let us know where you see those demands are, and then we can check out whether there are students and employers.
I just want to ask though, if the university system can articulate where the hubs are, which are going to be the magnet programs, that might alleviate some of those concerns. Because I do understand you can't be everything to everyone on every campus. But I feel as though people want to make sure that the campus in their neighborhood or their community is relevant and is going to be a magnet at something. So if we can, I'm not sure, hopefully Chair Moore is listening, and if the regents can go back. I mean, if you were to do the exercise, if you were to take away the names momentarily for Leeward, Maui College, Kapiolani, and you were to put what would be the trade then? If you didn't end up calling it Kapiolani, would it be the nursing college and culinary college? And then if Leeward ends up being the value-added college, I mean, how would you map this out so that people can see your whole hub and spoke system and which magnet programs are located at each campus? I'm not sure if the regions can go through that exercise with you and then report back to us.
Chair, just confirm that I have been listening. I want to confirm that I have been here listening. I hear you loud and clear, and I believe the president has too, and made a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to make sure I just get this up before I don't forget. So Ways and Means went to each county. When we went to each county, we tried to ascertain from the mayor or from local legislators which were going to be the top 3 economic primary drivers. There are going to be some secondary ones, but what would be the primary? It was articulated that on Kauai, it would be agriculture and value added, tourism, and jobs at Barking Sands. So if there's general agreement on that, is KCC positioned, meaning Kauai Community College, or is there a program located somewhere where KCC would end up being a spoke to help develop a workforce locally for those 3 industries on Kauai? So, we tried to include the Kauai Chancellor. We included the Department of Education complex area superintendent to our meetings with different industry leaders. And I think that's what Senator Moriwaki is talking about, is this articulation of what's going to be the economic driver that we want to focus on. What's the community college and the university system's role in that? And do we have programs to feed those economies? And then at the high school level, we see interim superintendent now creating magnet schools or CTE programs, academies, which will hopefully feed your programs, which will hopefully feed the economy. It's this whole articulation that she's talking about, but it's not mapped out. We haven't, until we had the discussion on Kauai, I don't think anyone said, okay, yeah, this is going to be Kauai's top 3 primary industries. When we went to Maui, we asked the mayor, what are your top 3 primary industries? And does Maui College or have access to those programs, or is a magnet to one of those programs? We tried to ask the same thing of the Big Island mayor. And I don't recall a specific list that he provided us. It seemed like he needed to think about it. But Big Island has so many different assets and opportunities with agriculture, floriculture, horticulture, ocean technology, astronomy. I thought he would rattle all of these off. But then we know what programs then Palamanui needs, Hilo Community College needs, and we can map in academies at Hilo High School and Waikea. So you play an important role, but we still need this articulation of what are going to be the primary drivers for each county. Because I think if we start statewide, that's too broad, and we don't really see it. We don't see that, because it has to be geographic in nature. It needs to be regional so that you can match the community college and the high schools. If it's too broad, then you can't do that. Am I forgetting?
No.
I'm trying to articulate what all you
Thank you.
guys are
No,
saying,
I
and
understand
then what we
exactly.
went through.
that
Yeah.
was-
I think, yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was
That was good. Thank you.
Yeah, because we came to this collectively, and when we went to every island or every county, and that would be the same thing for energy. We were trying to figure out where are going to be the energy focuses as we move hopefully to firm energy. What are going to be the jobs? I'd like to think at some point we're going to have a federal natural energy lab in Kapolei or Kalailoa, which would mean UH West Oahu hopefully could play a role in energy a lot more meaningful. Just things like that we tried to talk about. And I don't want to talk too much about it, but I want to just make sure I capture everything.
Yeah, thank you,
Chair.
Chair. And if your staff have notes about, the top 3 for each island, we'd like that. We do see things like the SEDS reports, but it sounds like you took.
No, yeah, we can
pages
share
down
with
to
you our
3
meetings.
bullets.
Actually, we have our notes from each WAM site visit.
Thanks.
So
That'd be great.
We did have a difficult time, I think, in Hilo, and Drew or Lorraine can chime in, where we tried to really, there's empty cargo space at the airport. There's a dwindling number of farmers in ornamentals. We're not sure why, but yet there's lots of land. There's pea bark there, CTAR is there. So there really shouldn't, there's all the assets and the tools to grow an ornamental industry, especially with all the new technology, which is I think what you guys were saying. And then there's export. There's room for export. Hilo Airport half of it was empty, or quite a bit of it was empty when we look at the storage. So just mapping all of this out and see what we can do to support that.
And it's the research part of it, like people are, they have research, but it's not connecting up to the education.
Sorry, I can't hear that.
So like people are, they have
you.
the research part, but it's not connecting to the education part. So it's like CTAR could be doing a lot more to train people, and also to become world-class in those areas. We need to know so that we can support those as well, and not just get federal grants. Yeah.
And I would hope that, when you talk about equivalencies for the faculty and so forth, and they talk about research and community, that these are the areas that they would be reaching out and working with the community, and not just react to what we're saying, but, the Hilo College, Hilo Community Colleges, they are people that live there. So I would think that you would have, the university would be proactive in finding out, okay, what is the top industries? What are we going to be heading for? And the regents need to be the one that it provokes this. And, we hear complaints about the legislature is meddling and, we should stay in our lane. But as long as we're not getting that from the regents, the oversight, then you're going to see us continually do that. And as chair of the regents, Chair Moore, I think that it's incumbent that, the regents play an active role.
I will follow up and send you the Board of Regents budget policy paper framework, which has a lot of this.
Yeah. Anyway, going back to the academies with the dual credit and the early learning, we're hoping that those academies then can help feed some of the community college programs, which I know Erica and Mike and Tammy are working on developing for agriculture, tourism now, IT.
Technology, IT and cyber.
Yeah. And so those CTE certificates are not they can transition people from high school quickly to the workforce, right? And we can provide internship opportunities. But I know that you're concerned that you don't want that to be where they end. you want them to go on to four-year campuses. But I really believe that that's an option. It should be the student's choice once they get into the
No question.
workforce. That they can always come back if they want to keep moving up, like as you're saying,
Right.
in management or whatever the case, but just getting them into the workforce quickly, if that's what they choose, we want to be supportive of that. And but they
I
gotta see the
absolutely agree with that,
opportunities.
Senator. And I apologize if I've ever suggested otherwise. I think when we get this right, and the current interim superintendent is a great partner, we're getting together quarterly now with Hawaii P20 to look at exactly these issues. And I would say there's nothing higher on our list for how to work together than creating, we're just using the word pathways, but from K-12 into community colleges or universities. They might go straight into either. And then we also have to get them, we have work to do within UH on pathways from community colleges into university programs as well. But the early college opportunities are one of the secret sauce for getting the students on that track while they're in high school into a pathway that goes somewhere into viable employment in the state of Hawaii.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to see what kind of mapping the regions and your administration ends up with. Senator Misalucha.
I'll pivot to another topic, and there's a table 15 on page 130, which is a list of all the CIP. So in the middle of the page, there's the renew, improve, and modernize for UH West Oahu. It's for like $6 million for the next 2 years. And then a few, how do you call that, rows after, there's the campus expansion and development of University Village. So I kind of looked it up whether was I missing a step here, but the last news article was a 2017 article about how a developer was chosen. Is that first one more like building the infrastructure for the campus, and then the $10 million would be for what? For the fiscal year?
The 2.5, and I'll let Vice President Young prepare to jump in. The 2.5 is for campus improvements directly for the academic facilities of UH West Oahu. And in general, we haven't been requesting this kind of money because the buildings are all relatively new, but it is now time that we have to start investing in maintaining the new buildings so that they don't become old buildings. The 10 million is infrastructure for the University Village, and Calbert's been in multiple meetings with other parts of state government about that. So why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so actually the 10 million is for anticipated soft costs related to the planning for expansion of the campus proper at UH West Oahu, but also for what's called the University Village project, which is the non-academic portion of the adjacent lands. Primarily, you'll probably think of it as the TOD, the transit-oriented development area that runs along the rail line. But the university has been, for years, working on a project to develop the University Village project. And it was, you referenced the going back to 2017, that we had started to try and work with a private developer consortium. I will say that currently that arrangement has not worked out. So we're having to pivot on that project. But the 10 million is related to redoing or making current the master plan that includes the campus development proper, as well as the portion for the University Village. The governor has included that as part of his overall request because of the interest in moving or advancing more quickly workforce housing development that can be made available on the University Village property.
So did we cancel that contract then and getting ready to rebid the contract?
So we actually never got to a place of a contract. That was one of the challenges with that approach. So we actually never got to a contract. The arrangement couldn't be solidified in a contract. So at present, that has been, we don't have a private development partner right now. We are pivoting that project into still trying to get to a place where we ultimately will develop the University Village properties, but we may have to augment the approach. The first approach considered a single master developer. It was a large undertaking requiring and expecting a large private capital investment to make that happen. That was one of the difficulties to try and get there. So we will now probably have to review an approach that is probably more sensible, in my opinion. Sensible in the sense that it can happen more quickly. It may entail smaller parcels and more targeted development. So that's probably going to be the approach going forward.
What's your best guess on the timing on this?
Well, actually, because of there's 2 rail stations that are along the UH West Oahu property. Those are probably, in my opinion, those will likely be the most expedient for our development opportunities as UH works with the state and with HART to put in infrastructure at those particular sites. So on that estimate, I would give it anywhere from, and keep in mind that I'm not the most optimistic of persons, but I would even say that it's within 3 to 5 years, there's development potential at those sites. But the university is also looking at possibly a film production studio in that area, and there might be greater opportunities if we find the right private development partner that could actually happen well before that time frame.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have 2 quick questions on the budget, and then Senator Favela, I believe, have a question. Going to the vacant positions, I noticed that they are vacant specialist positions, both at Hilo and at West Oahu. And my understanding is the region's policy is that there should be no specialist positions. So is there an intent to abolish these positions and not fill them?
Right now, Chair, I would say the intent is to address classification holistically, including this particular point. I don't know when and how specialist positions were first created at Hilo and West Oahu, but one way or another, we either need them and the policy should reflect that, or we don't need them and the practice should reflect the current policy.
Okay, well, the fact that they're vacant and the current policy, and this has been brought up in the past, so it's nothing new. And so I don't believe that those positions should be filled and they should be demolished until such time there's action on the classification. So that's the request. The second question is on the active contracts. I noticed there are a lot of open contracts that says completion of construction, but it's still open, and they go back from 2011, 2012. You know, and there's pages of that. So can you folks reconcile that?
I don't know if Vice President Gouveia has a quick answer. If not, we can give it something in writing.
Okay.
Here she is.
Good afternoon, Jan Gouveia, Vice President for Administration. The active contracts that are pending closeout, that is, we will acknowledge there is a closeout process that can be fairly tedious. And it's just a matter of going through the steps. And we have made it a priority to begin methodically going through all of our old open contracts to close them out and release any funds that are being tied up because of it.
This is on table 14, members, if you're following. Yeah, because, I see one that is started in 2011 and it's to completion, but there's a $195,000 balance out of 662. So there's a number of high balances that should have been completed. So if you can go through these and get back to us on that, Jan.
I will.
What's holding that up? And speaking of contracts, last time the legal general counsel gave us a list of all their contracts. Now I see it embedded into this active contracts. And I think I counted 14, but I don't know. Can we get a comprehensive list of all of the active outside counsel contracts that you have? Carrie, I see you on there. And then what's your total budget for your general counsel department?
It's a little, Carrie Okinaga, thank you, VPLA.
Over 2 million?
A little over 2 million, salary under 2 million.
Okay, so if you can give us that comprehensive list.
Sure, this is the list, Senator. It's just that in the past you've asked more detailed questions, so we produced a list just of legal services, but this list is also a annual
Okay, you can just,
showing of all the
yeah, if you can
pending
just
legal.
pull it out, all the pending ones, that would be helpful. Okay,
Sure.
Senator Favela.
So I guess this question would be for the other regions. I just want to go back to the campus, Manoa campus, on the inventory and the amount of buildings that is either empty or being renovated. I guess is there a way you guys can give us that information?
We can provide space utilization data, Senator, for Manoa.
Okay, I figured that was a question for the border region, but I can't, if you can do that, would be good. But the reason why I'm asking this, and I want a kind of good inventory, is because, we're hearing that a lot of them is not being utilized. No, we just want to know what's not being utilized and why. And that would be good to find out from there.
Didn't the regents have a plan about or a request about mothballing? Is that what the word was used? Mothballing some of the buildings, Chair Moore?
I don't know about mothballing, but we have a long-term plan to reduce the footprint of the campus, and Vice President Gouveia can probably articulate that better than I.
Well, yeah, I'm familiar with, reducing the footprint, but in fact, you guys increased the footprint by adding on Atherton. But I thought there was something that said they wanted a plan on what buildings that were not being utilized to save on electricity, combined buildings that we may only have 50% or not fully complete filled. Wasn't that a regent request?
The short answer is I don't recall that. And Atherton, I would observe, is not part of the university's footprint.
I'm sorry, it's not part of the footprint when you folks are paying for it. And okay, I'm not going to go into that right now. But is there any other regent on the call that can recall?
I can.
Who's that?
Regent Kudo.
Regent Kudo.
Yeah, we had made a request to consider the mothballing of buildings, but I was informed that it wouldn't work because of they'd have to do something with the all the caretakers of the building, and we couldn't shut off the air conditioning and all that. But the theory was to for buildings that were not utilized totally, and because we were consolidating mixed types of disciplines in one building, that the opportunity might present itself to mothball buildings for later use, but to reduce the operating costs and maintenance costs by mothballing it. And I was informed that that wasn't feasible. I mean, but it was raised.
Okay, so Senator Favela would still like to have a list of which buildings may be vacant. Was your question or not?
Yeah, that's the question. Only reason why, guys, I mean, whoever can answer the question would be really useful because well, we all know we get family members that work construction in that area. And there's a lot of question on how you guys, if you guys are mothballing or whatever it is, and how you guys get rid of stuff. Because I know the DOE has numbers. I know you guys have numbers on you guys' equipment too. But I was told that when you guys would get rid of stuff from buildings, you guys is gone. It just get thrown away. So we don't want to get into the whole inventory of your desk, cabinets, TVs, everything that when you guys reduce and clean out these buildings, if you guys actually have a list of either decommission or no longer on you guys' inventory list, because I know the DOE does that. If the DOE will get rid of a furniture like this right here on chair, they have to put it on a list that they got rid of them and where they dispose of. Because I was hearing it was a free for all the last 2 years on some of the buildings being renovated or decommissioned or mothballed, and all the inventory and all the good stuff, construction workers or even people that work there at the university was just taking it home. So like I said, that's one of the reasons. And the other one is, I just like to know how much of these buildings that is not being used 50%, mothballing and all, is actually being held on Hawaiian land, ceded land, crown land, what part of the campus is still utilized that is being occupied on Hawaiian homeland or ceded land. That's the question, all in all, because it seems like you guys like leave the air conditioner on because of the maintenance. You don't know what you're gonna do with the guys. But if the building not being used and all they're doing is maintaining them, it's costing us money. The person who's taking care of the building costing us money. So we need to know all of that kind of stuff because that is our taxpayers' money, guys. And if that's your guys' common practice, then we need to know that somebody should be accountable for it. Because right now, you guys think you guys have a big, deep pocket over there that is going over budget $6 million for the stadium. Procurement chair decided to make the decision on the benefit and a betterment of the school and his position. But think about what you guys are saying to the taxpayers. Yeah, we don't care your taxes get raised. We don't care how much taxes you pay. We're just gonna get things done the way we've been doing them. And it has to change. The atmosphere on you guys' campus and the university on how are you spending taxpayers' money, how you getting rid of a piece of chair, even though that chair probably worth 10 cents. You guys gotta change that atmosphere because that's what's happening right now. People is worrying about the spending of the university, especially when it comes to certain items like Ching Stadium. That is just something that we gotta look into. So that's the reason why I'm asking you about the vacant buildings or the mothball buildings or the empty buildings and stuff like that. I like to see what kind of inventory we have and how much overcost and overrun that we're spending on empty buildings. So you guys can start with that. That'll be fine. Appreciate it.
Just a follow-up.
Your follow-up. Senator Mawaki.
Yeah. Just in terms of the use of the buildings, part of it is the inventory, but the other part, and it I think relates to your telework policy. I'm really interested because you've got the unions to agree to however you're doing your telework. So we could learn, other agencies in the state can learn from that because we really do need to work with the unions in terms of how we space people, but also in terms of the plans for how you reconfigure your use of space so that we can be more efficient in the space that we do have. So if you do have a plan or at least some policies and what you did with the union, and that can be shared as well as what your plan is going forward and how you reconfigure for a different kind of work environment with teleworking and what you're doing.
Thank you, Senator. We'll be glad to share our policies and sort of some of our initial thinking. I will say we are not yet to the point where we have a full plan, but I think what we wanted to do was seize the moment associated with the transition from a world of COVID to, sort of a post-COVID approach to thinking about the future of work.
And with the union agreement, is that an MOA or how did you work that out? So if we could get a copy of that as well.
Jan deserves a lot of credit for working with that, and Erica, both working with HTA and UPA.
Thank you. President, I'd like to go into out-of-state working, UH personnel that is working out-of-state, in fact, working all over the world. It was brought to my attention, and I've raised that with you, and you have provided us with some information. Apparently, there's hundreds of UH salaried employees living all over the world. Some justified, many are questionable. Some of the concerns raised about taxes being paid, other income credit. If you live in an area more than 200 plus days, taxes are supposed to be paid to that state. So those are concerns. We asked about information of employees who may have worked out-of-state locations for as little as 1 month at a time in the past 4 years. And you did respond to say that it's not available in any of our informational systems, nor is it readily captured. But then you did state that this has been an area that you've already been looking into independent of our inquiry. So how long have you been looking into it? And if you have, then why wasn't the information readily available?
We started looking into it, let's say about a year ago. And we were not, we had a different interest than what this request came in as. Our interest and concern was about, in general, people who had a permanent residence outside Hawaii. And that's really when the tax and some other employment related issues show up. And so we are, I think we have a draft policy. Vice President Gouveia has been looking at it. Maybe draft policy is a little strong, but we've been trying to understand how would we be more agile in those rare situations when we have or believe we should have employees with a permanent residence outside the state. This inquiry to which we responded with all of this information, by and large, those are not employees with a permanent residence out of state, but rather employees who have spent, as you noted, at least 1 month out of state at any time in the past 4 years. So it's an overlapping but very different conversation. Typically, the way we get into the out-of-state work for permanent residents is when either a current and valued employee moves typically for personal reasons, or when the work assignment is permanently in another location, like when we have people teaching in our education programs that are offered in American Samoa. So I haven't gone back through the spreadsheets to see which of those people were in a situation in which it was about permanent employment, which is when, in general, the 200-day a year is intended to be approximately for permanent residency. And I did talk with the tax director after you talked with them, Senator.
I guess I'm just concerned because how are you able to get an extent of if there's issues if you're not looking at the whole complexity of this issue. And I think there's concerns raised because if you look at some of this, you'll see many that has personal reasons. They've been residing outside of the state of Hawaii, and I'm not sure how they are monitored,
So
how they are held accountable for their work. In the case of faculty where they receive equivalency for community work and so forth, and they're not even in the state for a period as long as a year or 2 years, some of these. You know, you have people here that intend to retire, and you know, it's really difficult because we asked for a follow-up on a little bit more specifics, but we get the same response that, and I'll read it. You know, the response is that work to be performed in accordance with position description, including but not limited to conducting the full life cycle of this one procurement and others, and then justification, finite transition period with fulfillment of responsibility determined to benefit UH, given the intent to retire. So there are a number of them that had intent to retire. So I'm not even sure how.
So if I can, I mean, you gave a couple of examples. So most of them are not intent to establish permanent residency somewhere else. And those that are the ones you noted. If it's intent to retire, sometimes that's where the person does have a personal reason. Typically, it involves some kind of family related obligation. I will just say we may, have different views about management approaches, but from our perspective, if an employee can do their work from somewhere else and is performing a valuable service, and rather than force them to resign prematurely, if we can close that off, we generally will do so. I think there's also at least one example where the reverse is true, where we wanted to hire someone, they could begin the work remotely, and that was actually before they established residency within the state as they closed off responsibilities at their current location. I'll just say one of the things that we've learned in this pandemic is that more work can be done from elsewhere than we ever expected. Just as 2 years ago, I don't think most of you believed we could have this kind of hearing in this format, regardless of location. That's what we and essentially every complex organization, especially those that are knowledge-based, we have all learned much, much more about what's possible. And whether they're out of state or on another island doesn't really impact their work performance. That's what impacts the taxability and employment issues, which is what we're developing a policy around.
Yes, but we have a state policy, and I agree with you that things have changed, but until such policy is matured or developed, the fact that if every state employee who felt that they could do their job while they're in Las Vegas for a month or visiting with their relatives in Canada or be in Japan or Korea or Italy or France or Mexico, I mean, these lists go on and on of all of these places, then we wouldn't have, half the people in government would not be here to do that. And if that's going to be our policy, then we should have, how are they being held accountable? What is the deliverables? How are they checking in? My understanding from the tax department, he has zero working groups. He said he cannot manage. He cannot manage anybody on.
The tax director is the only director who didn't allow telework in his department.
Yeah, he doesn't have anybody because he can't manage it. I mean, but that's honest of him. And managing this becomes problematic. Now, there's some here that are personal reasons, whether a family member is ill or they're taking care of a family member, but that's why they have sick leave, you have family leave, and you have vacation. And when other employees who bring this to our attention, the morale drops because they say they are not being given that kind of accommodation. And neither do we do that across state government. So I think the university has to be consistent to some degree with some of these. And I know we want to be compassionate. I know we want to be sympathetic, but you know, there are policies and rules that need to be followed and consistently put upon all, no matter if you're a chancellor or you're a coach or whatever, you have to abide by the similar rules. And that leads to morale problems within the university. So I really think that, you know, with the intent to resign, some of this is like 1 year. And so while they have this intent to resign and they're collecting their salaries, they're earning more retirement, right? They're earning more retirement or more vacation, and they cash out. So I would like to see how many of these that were allowed to leave the state, be on plan to retire, be on salary, and how much did they cash out at the end of vacation time that they didn't use or added to their retirement. Because that's
Senator, they're not on
constant.
vacation while they're there. They are working, and their
Yeah, but if they're
supervisor is
working-
accountable for performing the duties of their job. So if
Right.
they're teaching online, they can be teaching online from their office, from their home, from another island, or from another state, for
Right,
example.
as I said, some of this is justified, but there
Yeah.
are a number of them that are not. The personal reason, there's the retirement, there's a number of these, I think, and I don't think on your second entry back to us that those justifications came in, which is what we asked for. So I certainly would look forward to getting that. I think that there's still a lot of questions regarding your policy. Now, is anybody from the community college with us?
Yeah, we have Vice President LaCroix and Associate Vice President Mike Unibasami are both on.
Okay, because I noticed community college, your numbers were very small compared to the four your campuses. Hawaii Community College had 3, Honolulu Community College had 3, Kapiolani had 8, Kauai had 1, Leeward had 2, Windward had 7 total, compared to hundreds at Manoa, and Hilo had 38. So
With all due respect, Senator, Manoa has a research mission and people, it's a global research university. And for people to work for a month at some point somewhere else is not that unusual.
well, I'm not saying it's unusual, President. I'm just reading off the numbers. So
Yes, understood.
yes. So community college.
And I would actually want to thank the community colleges. They're one of the units that brought this to our attention. And it turned out that we had a grievance relating to someone out of state who complained that their employment was not continued. And that's when that's one of the ways we were alerted to it. So I also commend the community colleges for their diligence on this.
So who am I talking to from community college? I can't see.
Erica and Mike.
This is Erica LaCroix, Vice President. That is not a practice that we have allowed. And in most cases for the folks that are on our list, they were not renewed. So that's why our lists are so small. When it did come to our attention, we definitely wanted to clean that up and have much smaller numbers. And so we are very specific in the way that we allow those approvals to happen.
Okay, I certainly appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that when you did become aware of it, that you didn't approve or allowed it to continue. Now, what was the policy that you folks were given for out of state?
This is Mike Unibasami, Associate VP for Administrative Affairs for the community colleges. When this first came up, we did ask the question as to whether we had a policy at the university regarding working from out of state. And the the university was working on developing a policy at that time. We did get guidance from our OGC and basically followed their guidance in terms of discouraging allowing people to work from out of state because of the tax issues, because of the worker comp issues, because of legal issues that may occur with people not working in state because of the differing laws that apply to these kinds of things in employment from different states. So we basically took the position that we totally discouraged our campuses from continuing to employ people that resided out of state.
So how long have you, or when did you ask for guidance, and how long have you been aware of this problem or been working on this problem?
A little over a year ago.
And you were told that there was no policy at the time.
At the time, the university was still working on developing a policy.
So is it standard for like the chancellor to be away for personal reasons? President, I mean,
I wouldn't say it's standard. Obviously you're honing in on one case as you discussed with me directly.
yeah, which is brought to attention because, I mean, it seems as though, if you're gonna have from top down, I mean, you need to set the standard. I mean, if the community colleges are doing their best and feel that some of this is not or shouldn't be happening, I would think that would be something that would be across the board and consistently applied at all the campuses.
So again, there's a difference between becoming a resident of another location, which was the situation that we've dealt with and discouraged, and people who need to work out of state for some other reason.
Well, I don't
The
think
chancellor does not have residency out of state.
we're not talking about residency, President. We're talking about whether or not full-time employees should be allowed for personal reasons to be able to work out of state, not necessarily coming into, like, I think the state have a policy you have to report in person once a week or twice a week. I'm not sure.
I've never seen such a policy. If there is, please let me know. But
yeah,
for example, that chancellor, I certainly check in with more than once a week. We meet regularly in multiple configurations, particularly in time of COVID. We have meetings with people in the same building that are conducted just like this. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, so I just hope that you folks will look at this because you have a head coach, you have directors, specialists, public information officers, counselors, directors, specialists. You have a number coming from Hilo, which the chancellor herself is not here or have not been for 6 months. And again, some people looking at this are thinking people are taking a semi-vacation while they're,
actually, Senator, you wouldn't have known it from this, but the chancellor is in Hilo right now. But she could equally well have been in California at this time, but she can do her job via Zoom either way without people particularly noticing.
Okay, then perhaps we can just, we don't need a position that if it can be done by Zoom, we don't need a warm body. I'm just I hope you're just not defensive about it, but that you guys are really looking into this and because the concerns are raised by your people at the University of Hawaii.
I understand that.
Yes. And as you know, I do take seriously when I get these kinds of calls and and we look into it, we ask the questions.
Indeed, I know that.
Right. And when we get a list of hundreds of people, it's concerning. So I hope that that's something that you will follow up and look into.
Understood.
So how would you operate if you allowed all your chancellors to just work remotely from any location out of state? I mean, is that going to be your norm where now?
No, I mean, Senator, the Chancellor has a personal reason that, I don't think everybody has to discuss, but she is not living out of state. She's been performing her duties out of state for a reason that I understand, that she communicated to her campus. I hold her accountable to do her job.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering, there has to be some consistency. So it's either everyone's going to be allowed to do it, or you're so-called cherry picking.
I haven't received
who you're going to allow to work out of state.
Well done. I haven't received any requests from anyone else who reports to me to work out of state.
Okay, well, we have the list of those who are working out of state. I mean, I still don't understand how a coach coaches from out of state.
So in that case, the coach was hired from out of state, and given that it was not in season and that some of the initial work could be done online, we allowed that coach to start prior to relocating to Hawaii. That one is in my chain of command, so I wanted information.
Okay, so is that going to be the case for all coaches, that they're going to be allowed to work remotely until season starts?
This was, in this case, I believe it was a 1-month relocation period time. And if another coach were hired and could do what was needed for a month prior to locating to Hawaii, I expect the same conclusion would be reached. Not everything can be done remotely. So if the person had been, say, a trainer, that wouldn't work because that duty, can't be done remotely.
Okay, I just think that there has to be some consistency.
I agree with you.
I
think whoever people have to provide
and fairness.
The approval has to be unbiased and fair and consistent.
Yeah,
I
I agree 100%.
So, of course, we're always looking at the same list, President Lesnar. But what I noticed, the pattern here is that they work until they retire or resign. For personal reasons or whatever the intent is. But my colleagues is saying, and what I'm looking at the same thing, and like I said, we're not trying to, make you defensive, but to me, if we accumulate vacation and sick leave, but these guys is ready to retire, so they relocate themselves back to where they came from, Illinois, Florida, Ohio. I don't see nobody on these pages from Samoa, like you said earlier, Samoa. So
Oh, no, it's in this bigger list.
Oh, bigger list. Okay,
And
sorry.
Some of it
I see
are
Philippines. I
justification.
just asked you, so if they retire 3 months, a year, had one a year, and they don't rehire or they resign, who's paying all that? If they don't use it for personal reasons, because you're making a judgment, I don't use the word judgment, you're making the decision that it's okay for this person to go back to where they came from because they're going to retire and they're there for personal reasons. And let's put it on the dime of the people of Hawaii. Now you understand why is this a concern? And it's not like a few people like the Chancellor and other people. There's over 100-something on this page. So, and if you add them up, probably even more. I just like know when you would take it seriously when it comes to the taxpayers' money. Because I earn vacation pay and I get sick leave. That's what I get when I'm here because the taxpayers.
No, we don't get sick leave and we don't get vacation.
we're considered part-time.
Okay, so I'm part-time. Thank you, sir. That's even worse.
Not that we're part-time, but legally.
What I'm saying is, if they have all of this and they do retire, when they retire, then colleagues, what do they have? Do they have to cash out their sick leave or only their vacation?
No, well, you have 90, the state law now allows you to accumulate up to 90 days of vacation. Sick leave has no limitation.
And they can cash out the sick leave and vacation?
When they retire.
So don't you see that's a problem, sir?
Senator, I'd again say that these people are not retiring and leaving. They are working for some period of time somewhere else when it is determined that they can perform their duties from another location, as has much of the state during this pandemic. Also, this doesn't, there isn't a field here for who accumulates sick leave. But for example, lecturers don't accumulate sick leave. 9-month faculty don't get sick leave. So not every UH employee gets sick leave. Only certain full-time do.
From the list that you provided, it's a lot of these, or some of these start from 2017. So that was before the.
Because I asked only for 4 years.
That was.
Yeah, it started.
That's right.
Pandemic was in 2017.
I think what he's saying is that people could be relocating prior to their retirement. So they're gonna work remotely for the university until they retire.
Well, I know there is one that has attracted attention, and I think, if that individual, we make the determination at this point that the individual can do their job from somewhere else, and in some cases with trips back to Hawaii that are not at taxpayer expense.
We need to end, or we can, okay. The other question I have is RCUH has its own revolving funds. Okay, but is he here online? Well, let me ask this to the president first. Are we still sending tuition dollars to RCUH to run the graduate programs at the business?
We just within the last roughly month or so got agreement from UPA for a memorandum of understanding that will allow us to change that practice. And I see I have the first meetings on my schedule now to actually change that practice.
Okay, so that practice meaning the MBA
That will
program.
end.
That will end.
That will end.
And what is the projection date for the end?
We haven't mapped out the exact steps, but I think our target will be next fall.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you're able to take care of that, President. Thank you. So is Lenny on? Is RCUH, Lenny?
I don't believe so. We did not ask him to join.
Okay, well, the question, and we can get back to him, is that RCUH has a whole bunch of revolving funds that we talked about, a bit 376 revolving accounts. And the balances for these accounts were approximately 18 million and then 26 million in expenditures. And is that being reported to the legislature? These revolving accounts, the expenditures, and
I don't know the answer to that question, Senator. I'm sorry.
okay, so yeah, I would like to get that information and how these XX balances beyond the 60-day working capital per policy is being handled. And then any excess funds from the XMBA program, when the program ends, President, is that money going to go over to the university?
I don't know that we have it. I don't know the answer to that question. That'll be, now that we have the agreement with UPA, we can, that's part of the mechanics of how we'll do it. Whether we move it back or spend it down there, I'm not quite sure.
Okay, because my understanding is that revolving fund is in excess of over $1 million. So that's a lot of money. And then I guess it's the question of whether or not these funds, these revolving accounts are going to be allowed to continue when they violate the policy. So, and that's one of the reasons why there's questions regarding RCUH. If they're not even reporting to us, they're not here to answer questions. That's concerning. So
I don't think they understood that that was going to be a discussion topic. I apologize. Perhaps we should have realized that.
Yeah, when we
It's
do budget,
the UH. They don't. They're not budgeted through UH. as you know, they have a separate board, separate statute, and out of concern for being too close, the legislature, as you know, separated UH's, I'll call it oversight. Formerly, the president of UH was the president of RCUH. And we
But you
had,
still have board members on the board.
we do have board members on the
Yes,
RCUH board.
And they do get money from the university. They do support the
That's
university.
correct.
And the statute is created by us, so I think they should understand that they do need to be accountable to the legislature.
I
well.
believe they are. They're just simply not at this hearing. I apologize for not inviting Executive Director Gouveia.
Finally, my last question is, what is your plans to make the university as sustainable as possible? We keep talking about plans to revenue generation, and the university keeps talking about having autonomy or being completely autonomy from the legislature. And in order to do that, you'd have to be self-sustaining. So what, is there a plan? Do you have a plan on how that will be accomplished or semi-accomplished?
I think our plan is to identify multiple sources of revenue that can complement the base funding from the legislature and from traditional tuition. So there are multiple of those sources. One is non-traditional enrollments, particularly in the areas of distance learning, adult education, those sorts of activities. A second area that we've talked about is real estate. And while I know you're not in agreement with some of the decisions that we've made about a particular parcel that was not a university parcel to start with and never has been, we are looking at other university parcels where we believe we can generate revenue. And so that's definitely part of our thinking about alternate sources. We are always looking at ways to contain costs, and the more we can contain costs, that's kind of when we're looking at being economically sustainable, it's bringing revenue and expenses into balance. Extramural funding is another area where we're continuing to grow our external revenue, and philanthropy is another area where we are looking at continuing to grow revenue.
Thank you for that. I appreciate especially the comment to contain costs and revenue, balance revenue and expenditures, which is, I believe, what we here at the legislature try to encourage and hold the university accountable to. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Your question, Senator.
Yes, I would just like to follow up on one of the questions that I asked. Because, sometimes I get excited, I'm sorry. But the question that I want, if you guys can provide us with, is before you guys order new furniture for any office or building or classroom, and when you get rid of the old inventory, how do you guys decommission or write off the inventory when you get rid of them? Do you guys have a list of how much furniture in the classroom? Where did it go? Who did it went to? So like at Campbell High School, I give you an example when I was working there, and we had extra desks for the school. And we called all the schools in the region if they wanted to have furniture. So each of that furniture that had numbers on it would go on a list. So at the end of the day, we know that we gave 200 chairs and desks to Nanakuli High School, some to Mililani, Waipawa, whatever, but it has a number on it and it has an inventory. The problem that past practice that we've been hearing at the university is that you guys order all new stuff, and if the other stuff is too good, you guys leave it in the area. So is there a decommission list or a list of items that the university, when they bought new furniture and they got rid of the old one, do you guys have a list like that?
I know we have an inventory list for both formal inventory and what we call controlled property. I do not believe that it is, all of those items have to be inventoried. So I don't think those can just disappear. I don't know if we still have a warehouse. Is that under you, Jan? Or we used to have surplus stuff in a warehouse?
We've shrunk the size of the warehouse. It was getting a little out of control, but I understand the nature of the question. I don't know the details of it. I have a working understanding of how this part of our inventory is managed, but I don't want to misspeak at this time. So if we could be given an opportunity to just regroup with our team and our staff so that I can get the details on how all of this is tracked and managed. But
Yeah, that is fine. So what I'll do too is I'll send something to you guys on the year and project, and then maybe you guys can see if you guys have it. 'Cause I know you guys have a lot of stuff, so I'll try and narrow it down for you guys so we can figure out if that is what you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I know you guys the Regents is having a meeting this week. And based on what occurs, if the Regents and the administration could send us information as to what's the financial goals of the D1 program. So I don't want to really get into that now, but how much would the football program have to generate to subsidize the entire program or most of the program? And where do we get other funds so that we can support the other sports programs within the athletics program? So if you can send that. I mean, I know you guys are going to discuss it. I think this week, and if you can just follow up with the result of that when you've done discussing it and when you've all hopefully voted on and or agreed to some kind of plan.
And just to follow up on that, is fundraising usually part of the coach's contract?
I don't have that contract in front of me. Fundraising, I would say, is what we call a team sport also. So, I mean, we have numbers of fundraising for athletics, which actually have been increasing. I haven't looked at it coach by coach.
Is there anything specific though in for a coach to say, you know, we expect X amount of fundraising?
I can look at the template contract. I'm sure that'll be, as your staff is noting, we'll look at the contract template to see if that's in there.
And if it's not, maybe the discussion should take place at the region level to see maybe that should be part of it? I don't know.
Yeah, actually, General Counsel
university.
Okinaga has just texted me that it is not in the contract, but it is in the position description.
Okay, so it's not prohibited, Carrie, from being in a contract if the regents or the university feels that they would want that to be part of the requirement? No, thank you.
Is that the same? Is that the same for the athletic director?
The athletic director doesn't have a contract. He's an executive managerial person.
No, I'm talking about the job description.
Uh,
I believe so, but not sure.
Okay.
Let me just clarify that. Somebody sent me an email saying that the regents approved the athletic director's contract to 2023, but you said he's not on contract, so.
He has a multi-year appointment, but not a contract.
Okay, so they approved his appointment for till 2023. What's the difference between an appointment and a contract?
There's no contract.
There's just nothing in, well, I don't know.
Carrie,
I'm sorry, the question is,
que-
what's the difference between a point?
Yeah, if the regents can extend the appointment for up to 2023, but the president said he has no contract, so I don't understand.
no,
what-
I don't think they extended it. I think they appointed him for a time certain and then versus a contract. So there was no
Correct.
extension, right?
Well, the news said it was, the way it
So-
was reported, it said it was.
Can you explain the difference, Carrie, between the multi-year appointment and a contract?
So for example, Senator, the coaches have multi-year written employment agreements, which are actually modifications to the collective bargaining agreement because they're actually members of the union, HGEA. The athletic director, Matlin, may have an appointment, but he has no written employment agreement. He's an executive managerial, just as President said.
Okay,
Okay.
but he's not at will. He has his contract to a certain year.
You see it, Will?
I
He
don't.
has an appointment to a certain year.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's not at will then.
And so can you be let go? Is there a?
So at will is a legal doctrine, but typically, there's always, so when people use that term loosely, they mean like you can be fired anytime. So you can't fire somebody because of their race or their religion. There's different expectations and metrics also that are applied in the position description and or in conversations with supervisors. So even at will is not, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but even at will, people can be fired for.
But if you're hiring them for a multi-year appointment, do you have to wait till the multi-year ends, the length of that tenure ends? Or how does that work? You can, there's basically they still have the same criteria that if they don't meet performance, they can leave, they can be let go.
That's my understanding, but I'm looking at President to see if there's something. I'm not aware, I'm sorry, of details of Director Matlin's employment.
How is that different than yours or Calvert's appointment?
So
No other EMs have multi-year appointments.
Only the athletic director.
Correct.
Does he have fundraising requirements?
Well, they said they need to check if fundraising is part of his job description. I'm not sure if it's part of, there's no contract on fundraising for him.
But I think there is, fundraising is in there, but I don't think a number is articulated.
Do you have a performance metrics that you can send us?
Yeah. That's
I can send you the fundraising numbers because I just looked at
Oh,
them.
performance metrics.
Okay, you ask.
So, President, I think we're looking for some kind of position description. When we went out the position announcement, there should be some duties and responsibilities that you would require of anyone being hired under that position announcement.
That's right. There is a position description.
So that maybe would be helpful to have the duties and responsibilities.
Also, the evaluation metrics that's used to evaluate. We don't need the evaluation. We just want to know what the evaluation metrics are.
Is that universal or is there specific metrics for specific positions?
The metrics are general for all EM,
Okay.
and then they are applied specifically.
To the job description.
Yeah, correct. Sorry, I pulled the fundraising for athletics, which actually has been quite successful. So I'm not sure what, has raised this particular question.
Okay, well, we look forward to whatever documents the Board of Regents can send us after their discussions.
I guess what prompted it is if we know that the athletic department has a deficit and we need to look at how do we move forward, and if we want to elevate the programs, what is it going to take, the cost? And then you brought up the fact that there are many ways of being self-sustainable, and some of it is, raising funds, philanthropic, so forth. And so looking at whether or not coaches and athletic directors should be held to fundraising. And I don't know, maybe other universities do that. I'm not aware. I've never looked into that, but that's certainly something to consider. There's so many.
Yeah, so these
people-
are the last three numbers, just so since I just found it. 2019, 3 million and change. 2020, 4.3 million, which is a 40% increase. 2021, 7.7 million, which is a 79% increase.
Is what increase in what they raise? or
Fundraising,
increase-
this is fundraising at athletics.
Okay, so if you can show us the fundraising and show us the deficits in a matrix form. that
Right. Well, so the fundraising, this is one of those tricky things. The fundraising takes place through UH Foundation, which is a separate 501c3. So the athletics deficit sits in the UH account.
Does the coaches lead this fundraiser? Or the nonprofit leads the fundraiser?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite understand. You were breaking up a little bit.
I said, does the coach lead the fundraising or does this nonprofit lead the fundraising?
It's a variety. In some cases, coaches bring in the dollars. In some cases, it's the fundraiser. In some cases, it's the athletic director. As I said, it's a team sport. No one person can bring in a gift, really, a substantial gift.
So any gift that comes in, President, goes to the foundation, doesn't go
That's
directly
correct.
to the department? So
That's correct.
Okay, so if athletic director or a coach gets commitments for the program, it doesn't go straight to the program, it got to go into the foundation?
Well, it goes into an account at the foundation for the
For that
program.
program, okay.
Yeah,
Unless it's something physical.
that's right. Right.
Like football helmets.
So how does the
Like a
the
house.
funds- how does the funds that you raise by the foundation get transferred so that you can use it for your program, so that there isn't, it's not all G funds going to the program, that there's also monies coming in from donations or gifts? How does that transfer occur and how is it accounted for?
In general, those funds are expended directly from the foundation. But it depends on the nature of the gift. If it's coming in, say, for scholarships for athletes, it might come in to the university and be distributed as financial aid. So if it's to buy supplies, then it might be bought directly through the foundation. So it really depends.
Drawn down? How do these funds get drawn down? If you're collecting, say, 7 million a year,
Is
how
it
does it get
is it
drawn?
reimbursable or is it
How do you use
transferred?
It can be expended directly, or it can be, if it comes in through the Office of Research Services, it would tend to be reimbursable because that's how we work and that's how we bring in outside money typically. So, it really is gift by gift.
So I met with yesterday I had a meeting with the foundation, and from what I gathered from them is that they target. So like in the case of Chancellor, they would target and say, would you give money specifically for this project? And if they said yes, then that money is used for that project. They would specifically go out and fundraise. And what they're saying is they need more funding to allow them to go out to the different areas that need help to specifically fundraise for that particular nursing or sports or whatever.
So there's no direct transfer of funds?
No, there is sometimes.
Okay, so what's the mechanism? Does the Board of Regents approve the transfer, accept the transfer? How does that work?
It typically takes place through the Office of Research Services, which brings in extramural money from multiple sources. including the foundation.
But so nowhere is the Board of Regents involved in at least even cursory in regards to accepting those
They
funds?
accept the financial reports, which annually show those things. They have access to the, gifts and grants.
Okay.
I'm not sure, Vasilis or Tim, if you're on, if
No,
there's
well, at
any
the
other
city,
mechanisms.
I know at the city, the council has to approve every gift.
That's right.
And so I'm surprised the regents don't have a similar role.
I'm not surprised because we bring in a lot more gifts than the city does. And I mean, they might be $5, they might be $1 million. The board approves gifts that have naming opportunities or create new financial obligations, like a named professor or something like that.
Yeah, but it could be in one motion that you're going to accept all these different gifts. I'm not saying it has to be individually. I think that does help with some transparency.
Senator De La Cruz, may I provide a little bit of input here? We used to actually report all gifts and grants to the Board of Regents quarterly. And we thought that was quite tedious. So we do that annually with our report. So whatever gifts and grants come to the university, they're reported annually through the Office of Research Services. And I can provide the report. It is on the web.
Okay, well, I would think the regents would want to relook at that, because what if
we actually provided to them annually through our Research and Innovation Committee.
Yeah, but what if there's a questionable gift 1 year later? I mean, I think that's part of the process at the councils, is that when they approve the gift, they can question the intent, they can question what's going to happen with the money, they can question, where I think it's almost like you're hiding it.
Senator, we do not, the university does not accept the gifts through the foundation. Our Board of Regents, I don't think, approves the gifts that the foundation gets in. They have their own board. We at the Office of Research Services.
Yeah, but if there's a transfer of funds into the university, if there's a gift, the regent should still be involved.
You're correct, Senator. If there's a transfer to the university, then that is reported annually. Through the
So if there's a gift from the foundation, at least they can ask, okay, where did this money come from?
Correct.
Wait, sorry, Senator, this is Calbert. So I just want to be clear.
You don't have to be sorry that this is Calbert.
Only in this meeting, I always am constantly reminded. Yeah, because I don't know if foundation is on this meeting panel, but I just wanted to be clear. So I think first of all, the foundation actually quarterly does report to the Board of Regents their progress for the year up to that point on their fundraising efforts. They do not report on individual gifts. And if it were to require that the regents were to approve the expenditures on or drawdowns on every individual gift, that would be very tedious. Excessively, it would. I mean, there's literally thousands, tens of thousands of individual
I'm not
gifts.
suggesting the drawdown. What I'm saying is when there is an acceptance of the gift, it could be one motion of 100 pages of gifts. The regents can see what's being transferred into the university from the private sector or from nonprofits or donors. And if they have questions, they can ask.
Yeah, so that probably would be an expansion of their current quarterly report to the regents on their fundraising efforts, which is presented in the aggregate. It does not include specific individual gifts.
I know, but that seems
all individual, however, all individual gifts, contracts, and grants that they come to the university are quarterly presented by the university, by my office to the regions. The reports are on the web for each and every contract, grant, and gift that comes, whether it's a UH Foundation, Honeywell, or the.
I thought you said earlier it was annually.
Annually, we present it to the board, but the report is quarterly there for everybody to see.
Okay.
I will put, I could put that on the chat.
Okay, I just had a question for facilities for both community college and the, I guess, Jan. So based on the earlier conversation we had on, as the university goes through a mapping process of magnet programs and hub and spoke, can facilities also layer a plan onto that so that we're not duplicating facilities where, other than the hub?
I can say at a high level that that is a basic premise that we've been trying to enforce these last few years. There is the recognition that we want to more efficiently utilize our space by not duplicating a lot of its uses. There was a lot of focus paid on within the campus, but now we're looking at it across all campuses. So I guess the short answer is yes, there is a way to layer on an ability to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that they would have to do the programming so that you can support the programming facilities. But without the programming, you're basically reacting to the status quo.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
And I mean, we would also be reviewing duplication at the in the process of preparing any CIP request for anything new.
Yeah, and whatever gifts you get through the foundation that we only see, I guess, annually or quarterly. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for sharing your lunch hour with us. We really appreciate it.
And vice versa.
Adjourn.
Okay.
Thank you.